Mr. Sean. Sean, I want to give you a case, and you tell me what you would do. You are a judge, and you find out there's a case in front of you where two doctors have a fertility clinic. They have, for the past 4 years, been treating couples who are having some kind of infertility problems. They have the ability in their clinic to store eggs and sperm, to store embryos. Come to find out, these two doctors were taking healthy embryos from one couple and were actually using them in other couples. Now, you find out that in one particular case, you've got a set of parents who had produced 10 embryos. You got living, healthy embryos. 2 of those embryos were actually sold, so to speak, to an unsuspecting couple. They thought it was their own. They were implanted. It resulted in a healthy child. The original parents now found out about it. As a judge, how do you rule?
Well, see, this should
I missed something.
I think you'd have to really think over it because since basically they're lying to these people, because if they're thinking what they're getting is their own sperm or say something like that, and they're not, technically that goes against, the laws and practices that we have in this land, where
right.
You'd have to set that part straight. Then with that one kid, I'm not sure.
So do you give the 6-year-old back?
I'm not, even though it'd be morally good to do because it would be their kid, technically it'd be hard to rip a kid from, the home that they know, that they possibly love, and then just putting him into a strange family, even though the kid belongs to it, it'd be kind of wrong both ways.
Okay. Again, guys, this is an actual court case happened in Orange County, University of California, Irvine. The point I want to make here is, again, just because we can do something, it can open up a Pandora's box like we've never imagined. And, in this case, you had multiple people impregnated with other people's children. Lots and lots of problems. Lots and lots and lots of headaches from it. You could just imagine. Imagine for just a moment if you were a preacher and an infertile couple came to you and they said, hey, we just found out we have a child that's 3 years old that is growing up with this other family. That would be some of the most hardest counseling in the world. Because it's a lose-lose situation, realistically. I mean, no matter what. James, let me ask you a quick one real quick. Are you of the opinion that killing an embryo is murder?
The destruction of life is murder, yes.
Okay. So your cousin is a good guy, but he's a little bit clumsy.
Oh, you know him.
He works in a laboratory setting. And one day he's in the lab by himself, and he is supposed to be replacing the liquid nitrogen to make sure that all of their specimens, all of their tissue samples remain cold. So he's adding liquid nitrogen to this special container. And lo and behold, Mr. Clumsy Cousin bumps a couple of tubes.
Oh, man.
One of them is labeled human embryos.
Wow.
They roll out onto the floor. Some are immediately destroyed. Some of them begin to thaw. Some of them have got fuzz on them. Some of them actually go into a drain. Do you charge him with murder? Multiple counts of murder.
No, I wouldn't. I think murder is premeditated and it has intent. if that's some sort of neglect or involuntary manslaughter, maybe the charge would be different, right? I mean, because it was not intentional, it was an accident.
Okay, do you charge him with manslaughter? Would you, if he called you up on the phone and said, "Oh, James, I've done a really dumb thing. I'm in trouble. Nobody saw this, but I just killed like 4 or 5 embryos. But it's okay. I scraped the fuzz off a few of them." Oh wow.
He still has to be held accountable, whether it's intentional or not. He still has to be held accountable, I think. And when you're dealing with life, you can't really afford accidents that are going to destroy life. So I would say you have to charge him with manslaughter. And I'm biased a little bit anyways because I don't like my cousin that much.
Great. All right. The point being, guys, the area that we're talking about can get so complex, and I'm throwing out these things. I want you to know, so far, every case study that I've thrown out to you today is a real case study.
Wow.
These are real things that have gone into our court system or that are in the records. And you can just imagine the insanity that is going to continue as technology continues. And so as Christians, we've got to we got to be aware, but we've always got to remember to fall back to the Bible and remember that God has set a standard. Dustin.
Yeah, wouldn't it be advisable for some of these scenarios to get some kind of lawyer or attorney involved? How much does our job as preachers, I mean, obviously we don't want to get ourselves in trouble counseling on legal issues. And we don't want to obviously give biblical advice, but shouldn't we seek out shouldn't we advise them to seek out some kind of lawyer or to get some kind of legal help?
Yeah, I don't think there's too much wrong with that, but I mean, obviously, I think the first and foremost thing you must do in their mind is you must make sure that person leaves your office with their soul intact and with a clear understanding of what God's will and expectations are. If
we only heard a little bit of that. You were doing something with your hand. That's what you were doing.
All right.
Sorry.
I said, we as preachers and counselors, we have an obligation to make sure that anybody leaving our office leaves knowing God's will,
right,
and making sure that their soul is intact in the sight of God. Now, outside of that, if it comes to legal issues, sure, certainly we can turn that person over to somebody that may have better counsel. But we can't let somebody leave our office, shrug our shoulders, say, "You know what, I don't know anything about that. Let me call up Buddy Joe. He's a lawyer. He'll take care of you." If you do that, you have missed the boat in making sure that person's heart and soul is right in the sight of God.
Yeah, and that's what I was asking. I didn't know the legal restrictions that we have as ministers or counselors. I didn't want to give information to somebody when, hey, they really need to be talking to the law because they did something bad, like James's cousin.
Well, and that's where, as a preacher, here would be my counsel to you men, is if you are, let's say you're in a congregation of 150 people. I know, like, for instance, Anthony's got a smaller congregation, and it may be a little harder. But if you're in a little bit larger congregation, you've got elders, godly elders. You let them know fairly early on in your work with them, guys, I don't want to ever find myself in a legal issue. Should somebody come to me needing counsel, whether it be on any of this stuff that we're talking about, who would you recommend we send them to?
Okay.
Because the elders in that congregation have enough networking and connections that they either know a Christian lawyer or they know somebody who could handle that situation. That way you have relieved yourself in instances like that.
Okay.
All right. Picking up where we left off. Genetic engineering at conception. let's see. There we go. So we've got the three that we talked about: cloning, artificial insemination, in vitro fertilization. I want us to start with artificial insemination. Method known as artificial insemination is not used as often because basically AI is only used in dealing with problems with the male. That's not always the case, but that is generally the case. You've got a male that's got a low sperm count, or he's got non-swimmers, or whatever the situation is. This is a situation that can fix that. Women often have more fertility problems than men due to the fact that their reproductive system is a lot more complex. When the woman is having reproductive problems, AI is not likely to help the situation. Process of fertilization and subsequent implantation of human eggs is so complicated that it's amazing that there are not more problems than there are. Artificial insemination means we take the guy's sperm, and believe it or not, there are physicians who will take a single egg, fertilize that, and implant that. Now, you also have a lot of folks who will take multiple because they're wanting to increase their odds and to increase the statistics for that fertility clinic. What do you think? Can we allow it or not? Is this one of those things where it's good, or is this a bad?
It's good. We just think it's
If it's just one egg between a man and a wife. Husband and a wife.
Okay. Let's look at this for just a moment. There are three kinds. AIH, artificial insemination with a husband's sperm. AID, artificial insemination with a donor's sperm. AIDH is where you got both. In other words, maybe the husband wants to try to be the dad, but he's got such a low sperm count, he wants to beef up the numbers with the donor sperm, so they basically throw them both into a batter bowl, and there you have it.
They really do that?
You guys need... They don't put it in a batter bowl, no.
Thanks.
Goodness gracious. All right. Let's talk practicality. Can we recommend this?
Not all of it.
Not all of it. Hello.
Brad?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure you're still there.
I'm asking you guys, can we recommend this? I'm waiting.
Oh, not all of it, is what we said.
Okay?
just the
What is
AIH
the-
one.
If we were on.
Just the AIH. Why?
Because that's between the man and the woman, and there's no outside
Help.
help. Yeah.
Okay. Guys, do not
It would be
forget.
like it would go. You know, we have to. I mean, I view it as like two men sleeping with my wife kind of thing. That would be
Right. Don't forget, you cannot violate the marriage bed. Period. I don't care if we're talking technicalities, if we're talking technology, whatever. We do not have the right to violate the marriage bed. Two of those categories violates the marriage bed. So as a preacher, counselor, teacher, there's only a single instance where I can say this would be all right. And that is if a husband donates his sperm that is put with a single egg that is implanted in his wife. Outside of that, then you got issues. Now, you say, okay, single egg. What if we want twins? Well, okay, 2, 3, that's fine. But understand, I don't want you collecting a bunch that have got to be frozen. Anthony.
Wouldn't we have an example of the other two in Sarah and Abraham, and how they were promised a child? Well, let's do
Hagar.
Let's do it a different way, and
Hagar, yeah.
that wasn't God's plan.
Absolutely. Ishmael resulted.
Gotta be a preacher.
What happened to Hagar and Ishmael?
Bad juju.
They were exiled.
Yeah. Guys, think about it for just a moment. That was Abraham's literal flesh and blood. That was his son. He has to march him to the edge of the wilderness and send him away, knowing that that's his boy. And back in those times, guys, it wasn't like, you walk them down the street and you got a McDonald's and a Walmart. There's a pretty good chance that they were going to die of dehydration, starvation, or get killed by folks along the way. Because a woman cannot, in those times, was not a good defense for herself. So he's sending them away in the back of his mind thinking, this is probably it. High cost to be paid every time we try to violate God's original plan. Let's look for just a moment at the implications of artificial insemination. Number one, you got women who can bear children for unmarried men. Number two, you got women who can bear children for homosexual men. Number three, you got women who can bear children for other couples. The last thing that we're going to talk about today is surrogacy, if we get that far. Number four, women who are lesbians could have children without marrying. Number five, sex of the child could be pre-selected. In other words, and this time I actually am being serious, they can put the sperm and egg all of the fluid, the eggs, the sperm, in literally what kind of appears to be like a blender. It's a centrifuge. And because two X's are heavier than a Y chromosome, the X's will actually sink to the bottom, the Y's go up to the top, and lo and behold, you can pre-select. Legal problems arise in that who is actually the father if the donor sperm are used. You got a donor father, you got the other father. So who can be held legally accountable? Now, also, what if the child grows up and he wants to know if he's going to have any genetic health issues? Does he have a legal right to find out who the donor is? So again, lots and lots of implications. It all comes back to a biblical principle that we cannot violate that wedding bed, that marriage bed. Who's got their Bible?
Well, everyone. Hopefully everybody does.
That's the right answer. Very good. Somebody turn and read 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 14 for me.
Oh, that is my favorite book. Can I get that one?
I got it.
Sorry.
Let's have a little WWF smackdown for who gets to read.
I win.
I
1 Timothy 5, what now?
14.
Got it, Quentin?
Oh, yeah, I got it. Oh, okay. Therefore, I want the younger widows to get married, bear children, keep house, and give the enemy no occasion for reproach.
Okay.
Some have already
You're good.
to Paul's statement.
Notice Paul's divinely laid down order there. We get married first, then we bear children, and then we guide the house. Guys, with artificial insemination, there doesn't need to be a marriage union. There doesn't need to be basically anything. This is one of those cases where you got a technology that can be used to help a Christian couple get married or get pregnant that couldn't. But it can also be used in many instances that are very unscriptural. Right now, the end thing is for lesbian couples to have their own child, meaning both women have eggs pulled out, they're fertilized by donor sperm, and then they either have, usually what they're doing is they're crossing, meaning Sally is giving Betty her egg to raise in her womb, and Betty is giving Sally her fertilized embryo to raise in her womb. And then this lesbian couple has children, and they think it's all cute and hunky-dory. And the child grows up, and they're mentally screwed up, and they end up in an institution. How do we approach in the church a couple that comes to us and says, hey, I want to use this situation. First thing we do is we make sure they understand clearly the marriage bed cannot be violated. Now, here's the deal. Let's say they do their homework. They go on to a fertility clinic website. Now, and again, guys, if you all do not know of couples that are in this situation, get ready is all I can tell you. We actually had some friends over last night who fit this category. They've never been able to have children. They have 4 that they have adopted. Loving family, great family. But for about 6 years of their marriage, it was the most stressful time. Every month, once a month, they would go and hope and pray that that pregnancy test would come back positive. And every single month it got worse and worse, and people started asking them, when are you going to have kids? And it was a stressful situation. So you've got this couple that goes to a place like this. What is the first thing that couple is going to hear? What is the first course of treatment normally?
Isn't it like fertilization treatment or something to make you like?
First thing they're going to do is they're going to give you drugs.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through these. Guys, I don't expect you to memorize all of these. I do want you to at least kind of know what some of them do so that you can at least converse with somebody intelligently. For instance, clomiphene citrate, it is a drug. It's probably one of the most popular. You've heard people say, I'm on Clomid. What does Clomid do? Well, Clomid tricks the brain, the pituitary, into thinking that there is less estrogen around, so it produces a lot more estrogen. This would be for somebody who is not ovulating much. It also can increase the number of eggs, as you see. Then you've got stuff like Humagon or Repronex. This one directly stimulates the ovaries. This one's actually a fun one. It is usually given by injection. So you can just imagine, hey, honey, come over here and give me a shot. That's not exactly the most romantic phrase in the book. But for folks who are going through fertility situations, this can really, it is serious. One of the problems with this one is you can get ovarian hyperstimulation, which means you can release loads and loads of eggs at the same time. And that's why on a lot of these guys, you hear like Octomom, you hear about Kate and John plus 8. People who are taking fertility treatments, a lot of times they don't just have one, they have multiples. This is Fertinex, also called Gonafel. This one basically is another ovarian hyperstimulation, directly stimulates the ovaries. It's a peptide hormone. Then you've got Novarel that is, let's see, this one is simply primarily for folks who are just experiencing a problem of ovulating. In other words, their body will not release an egg. Next guy. Parladel is for suppression of prolactin hormone levels, allows the return of normal menstrual function. There are a lot of ladies out there who basically, for whatever reason, they lose their cycle. Maybe they are very active. You guys have probably heard of some of the Olympians who basically they don't have a cycle anymore. Or maybe one of the members in your congregation foolishly gets a Depo shot, and so 5 years they aren't going to have any children. Well, 2 years into it, they decide I want to have a child. So they have to get it removed. This would be a drug that would kind of jumpstart their menstrual cycle in order to try to get them to where they could have a child. The last one I'll show you is Prometrium. Supplements the levels of hormones naturally produced in the last half of the menstrual cycle. In other words, this is one that would basically try to artificially set up the right conditions in the womb. So the very first step, when you go to that place, is they say, hey, let's try this pharmaceutical approach. Now, if the pharmaceutical approach doesn't work, and for different people, they wait different amount of time. Some folks say, let's go 3 to 6 months. Some say, let's go 6 months to 12 months. But at some point, that fertility clinic is going to say, didn't work. Now what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to basically see what the problem is. That means the gentleman gets to go in a room, the lady gets to go into a room, they examine them, try to figure out, okay, do we have a sperm problem? Do we have an ovary problem? And that's at the stage where they start making these other offers. They say, okay, maybe artificial insemination is the answer if the guy is not producing sperm. If normally, if the young lady is having problems, then we're going to go to another procedure known as in vitro fertilization. Vitro fertilization, as we talked about, it's from the Latin meaning in glass. Normally, ovaries are stingy with their eggs, releasing only one egg approximately every 28 days. But an injection of proper hormones can cause superovulation, releasing multiple eggs. Here's what happens. You got a procedure where 32 hours after a hormone injection, an incision is made in the female's abdomen. They go in with a laparoscope, they look and they see this little blister on the ovary. And that blister is basically like I know you guys are going to laugh, but it's basically like a zit that is going to release a bunch of eggs. It's a nice zit, so to speak. So they go in and they purposefully bust that zit and suck up the eggs. Eggs are placed into a special growth medium for several hours, and then they're placed into sperm, and within a few hours, fertilization happens. Now we start getting into problems, because there have been few regulatory laws in the books dealing with those rapidly increasing reproductive technologies. There is little data to help us understand how good this is. The best number I can give you is if you were to take the best case scenario, and I mean the very best case scenario, the success rate of in vitro fertilization is about 17%. Meaning 17% of all people that go are able to successfully have a baby. Now, if you go to actually able to deliver a healthy baby, that drops down to 11%. The cost of these is incredibly high. Normally, it's somewhere between $7,000 to $15,000. That's for a single shot, for a one-time trial. Most people are in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 times they try. So you are looking at financing either a high-end luxury automobile or a house. Now, I'm not saying that to say that's more important than the child by any means, but I'm trying to put in perspective. You got couples out there who are going $50,000, $75,000 in debt simply trying to have a child. What's the problem with in vitro fertilization?
You got all these babies that they pulled out and fertilized.
Okay.
And what do you do when you're done?
Well, I'll tell you what you can do. You can come to our clinic, and we provide you a service where every year we're going to put them in this special fluid, and we're going to freeze them. And if you decide you'd like to have another one later on, you can come back to us, and we'll implant some of the. Of course, it'll cost you $15,000 more, but you can use some more of those. You can freeze them.
Cousin comes along and spills them.
Till James's cousin comes along and spills it, right? Guys, what are all fertility clinics driven by?
Money.
Money and statistics. They want to show people that their clinic is the clinic that results in babies. How do you increase your odds of getting somebody pregnant?
Put more babies in.
You create more embryos and you inject more of those into the woman. You create more so that you can selectively look at them and go, okay, these 3 are best. And the common number is 3. They actually, in most cases, they will implant 3, increasing their odds. So let's say we're talking average. We've made 15. We implant 3. That means you've got 12 that you got to decide what you're going to do with. What happens with those 12?
They'll eventually be destroyed.
Yes.
Or don't they want to
Or
use them for
sold.
stem cell?
To researchers.
Yeah.
Okay? Is it ethical for a Christian to say, hey, you can use those for research?
No, it's killing the babies.
It's killing the child. Okay, I'm going to show you on the screen your only ethical option. The only ethical option, as I see it, is through organizations like this one right here. That is embryo adoption programs. This one's called Snowflakes. I've actually gotten to chat with several snowflake children. These are kids who their parents created these embryos. The parents didn't want to keep paying the yearly fee, so they adopted the embryos out to families who could not have children. Those embryos are implanted, and now that particular child is able to grow up into a loving family. This is not a win-win answer, because if, let's say somebody in your congregation says, I'm going to have this, and I'm going to adopt out the extra embryos. Well, that sounds all good and all, but what if the family that child is going to is Muslim? Or what if they are atheist? Or what if they are Jewish? You've just sent your embryo to be implanted in people who are going to lead that person away from God.
Hey, Brad,
Yes, sir.
I see your point, but even with that, is it not better to allow that life to live than to have it destroyed?
Oh, absolutely. That's why I'm saying your only option.
Okay.
I mean, I would never, ever, ever, ever condone killing an embryo in the name of research. That's an abomination to God. So as a Christian, you basically got 2 shots. You can implant them into yourself, but usually by this time, if somebody's sitting in your office, they've already made up the decision, I'm not going to do that. My family's done. We don't have the money, or we don't have the whatever, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to do that. Well, then your only other option is to allow those embryos to be adopted by somebody that can rear them up.
Those cells are going to die anyway.
Who's,
Quentin.
what,
If you
what do you mean they're going to?
If you inject 3, If you inject 3, they produce 12. They have a kid. You still have some that are in the human body that will go away eventually.
Okay, I'm not following you. I mean, I understand. I understand what you're saying. If you implant 3 and only 1 makes it,
Right.
then you're saying that 2 of them have died.
Right.
Right. That's a whole nother topic.
So
That's a whole nother ethical
So
dilemma.
you're saying you let the process happen naturally versus me kill them myself? Those
No, I haven't even condoned that yet. We're coming back to that. The whole idea of implanting 3, knowing that, hey, probably most of these are going to die. Dean.
I agree with what you're saying, but
Then you're a smart man.
No, I'm not going to comment, but anyways, just as kind of coming at it from the other side, a lot of people that I talk to about this say, well, those embryos can go to research that can help cure cancer or help with situations like Christopher Reeve had and things like that.
All right.
You know, spinal cord injury, diabetes.
And a lot of those people are ignorant fools because, as nice as I can say it, guys, I met Christopher Reeve. I know precisely what happened in his case. In fact, we got to look at part of his case study in our neurology lab. I know where he was cut. I know what was damaged. And anybody that honestly believes embryos can help that versus adult tissue, they don't have a clue about what the whole stem cell debate is even about. We're going to talk about that when we get to stem cells, whether or not we need embryonic or whether we can use adult stem cells. Make sure, Dean, you listen to that, because that's going to be important when you converse with people and they say, oh, we got to have embryos, this will be good for research. Well, the fact of the matter is we've done research, and it's the adult stem cells that are actually much, much, much better in treating patients. We did, I'll throw this out right now just to give you an idea that I do know what I'm talking about. When I was in school, I worked in an Alzheimer's and Parkinson's lab. There were labs that we knew about, that we were somewhat affiliated with, that were doing direct injections into human brains with embryonic stem cells. So basically they take an embryo, they suck out the stem cells, they put it in a syringe, they drill a hole, jam it into the brain, shoot it into the area that is got problems, hoping that those embryonic stem cells can then grow back tissue. Guys, remember, that's foreign tissue that they just injected into the brain. That's tissue from embryos. And in fact, it took 7 aborted fetuses just to get enough stem cells to treat a single patient. Not only did they not get better, in most cases, those patients actually set up an immune response and actually developed tumors in the injection site. That's what's not making the media. And that's why I get really frustrated about this topic.
Thank you for the technical.
No problem.
And
All
those
right.
are live people that were doing that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Clinical studies. Yeah, clinical studies. You'd be surprised what we're doing in clinical studies.
How can that,
in there, boy.
how can that be any different than killing an embryo then? I don't understand. I don't understand how they can do a test like that would jeopardize a human life of an older person, and they say that's okay, but then we do abortion. You know, we think abortion's not okay. You see what I'm saying?
Okay? I do understand they were doing these tests with the assumption that the subject was going to get better.
So you had some kind of consent.
Oh yeah, they definitely had informed consent. And you can't do experiment on a patient without it.
Part of somebody's like, yeah.
And guys, you would be blown away at somebody who is either in stage 4 terminal cancer or somebody who is advanced Parkinson's or advanced Alzheimer's. They are willing to, a lot of times, they're willing to be experimental guinea pigs. If they think there's any inkling that might work, they'll sign their life away on a heartbeat.
Does that count as suicide? Then it's frowned upon in the face of God.
There again, that's a fine line, because in their mind they're thinking they're going to get better. They're not purposefully ending their life.
Yeah, it's not.
So what you're
So
for?
it's-
So what you're for is letting life play its natural
Or
course.
simple, maybe.
Absolutely. God never, ever in the Bible ever has given man the ability to take other lives. I mean, we don't get that. That's him. He gets to make that call. Here's some implications we got to think about. Now again, I want you guys to keep in your mind, I want you to try to keep separate the concept of artificial insemination, which is taking sperm and egg, putting them together, and implanting that, versus in vitro fertilization, which means we're going to take a bunch of sperm, a bunch of eggs, we're going to fertilize all of those in glass, and then we're going to start picking them out. This one, women who have desired to have children but whose health would not permit it could donate an egg, have it fertilized through in vitro fertilization, hire a surrogate mother to carry them to term. You got older women who wish to avoid the threat of genetic diseases common to their age group could accept a fertilized egg from a younger woman donor, then carry it to term in their own womb. You got women who could rent their wombs, i.e. surrogate motherhood. But ultimately, all three of these pales in comparison with what we were talking about. And that is a situation where you have got multiple embryos being created. This is a case study. Pat Anthony, 48-year-old grandmother from South Africa. Her married daughter, Karen, 25, was unable to have any more children due to the fact that she almost bled to death during her first delivery. She had her uterus removed. Through IVF procedure, eggs from Karen's still functioning ovaries were fertilized by her husband's Alcino sperm. But the historic part of this story is that the fertilized eggs were implanted in Karen's mother. In other words, Pat would be the first woman ever to give birth to her own grandchild. October the 14th, 1987, Pat did just that, except it wasn't a single grandchild. It was triplets. David, Jose, and Paula. Born by cesarean section, not only made the evening news, but also history. Good, bad, or indifferent? What do you think?
Bad news.
I'm not wrong with that.
Let me remind you guys of a couple of Bible passages. Proverbs chapter 24, verses 11 and 12. Deliver those who are drawn towards death. Hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. If you say, surely we did not know this, does not he who weighs the hearts consider it? He who keeps your soul, does he not know it? And will he not render to each man according to his deeds? In other words, folks, there is a lot on the intent right here. If you go into a fertility situation and you know what's going on, you're going to be judged accordingly. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. The Lord said to Samuel, do not look upon his appearance or his height or his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for the Lord looks at the outward. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at his heart. Why did I include this verse?
He's evaluating his heart.
Intention.
Nope. Because a lot of times, guys, when people are talking about what we're discussing right now, they don't see an embryo as a human being. They look at the outward appearance. Luke chapter 14, when you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the just. Again, I include that primarily to remind you of the fact that you got a situation where just because somebody looks different, is different, whether it's an embryo, whether it's a retarded person, whether it is X, Y, Z, it doesn't make it less human. The next area that we haven't talked about, we're fixing to go to, would be postnatal manipulation, where they are basically counseling people to either kill or do something to that child if it's not going to be seen as normal. So we've talked about preconception, we've talked about at conception, we're talking about what we can do as far as AI and in vitro. Now let's spend just a moment looking at postnatal. Here we go.
They're going to be live. He's going to post it on the web so you can get to it. No, probably.
All right, this is by David Lyre. Says, if we have a baby that I know is malformed beyond hope, I make no attempt to preserve life. This is a quote by Richard McCormick. He's also a doctor in a book called To Save or Let Die. He said, life is a value to be preserved only insofar as it contains some potentiality for human relationships. In other words, in his mind, the only reason you would preserve a human life is if it can later have relationships. Where would that put somebody that's autistic? Or somebody that has, say, cerebral palsy, or somebody that has Down syndrome? In this guy's mind, that life has no value.
He probably would have killed Helen Keller.
Definitely would have killed Helen Keller. Francis Crick, he said, no newborn infant should be declared human until it has passed certain tests regarding its genetic endowment. And if it fails these tests, it forfeits the right to live.
What? Isn't that what the Greek said, too?
William Galen. By the way, I would point out Francis Crick was one of the co-discoverers of the molecular structure of DNA. Dude's got a Nobel Prize. Of course, so do some other people, but that's an old other topic. William Galen. He said it used to be easy to know what we wanted for our children. And now the best for our children might mean deciding which ones to kill. We've always wanted the best for our grandparents, and now that might mean killing them. And then finally, R.A. Gallup, MD, quoted by John Waddy. He said, once you permit the killing of an unborn child, there will be no stopping. There will be no age limit. You're setting off a chain reaction that will eventually make you the victim. Your children will kill you because you permitted the killing of their brothers and sisters. Your children will not want to support you in your old age. Your children will kill you for your homes and your estates. If a doctor will take money for killing an innocent womb, he will kill you with a needle when paid by your children. This is the terrible nightmare that you're creating in the future. And guys, there's a lot of truth to that. So again, as we think about post-genetic manipulation, I know some of you have heard me talk about this, and I always hesitate repeating myself, but I'm gonna say it anyway, just because I know some of you haven't. There are, in some hospitals, there are still little rooms off of the labor and delivery floor. Thankfully, most of them have been demolished. I've actually had the distinction of seeing one in my lifetime here in Nashville, Tennessee. A lot of them have been converted into like storage rooms, but when you walked into these rooms, what you would see usually is a stainless steel table, maybe some stainless steel racks on the wall. They usually had a big air conditioning duct right above it, and they would only be about 6-7 feet wide. And when a child was born into this country that was viewed as not being normal, that child was taken, still wet with the mother's afterbirth, and it was dropped onto that stainless steel table, and then the cork-padded door was pulled shut. Now, why do you think the door had cork on it?
So no one would hear.
To keep the doctors and the nurses from hearing as that baby slowly died from hunger and exposure.
Ridiculous.
In some cases, guys, now this obviously I'm telling you about some of the more horrific ones. Some cases, a baby would be born with something like spina bifida, for instance. Back in the day before we could actually corrective surgery. Baby is born with spina bifida. The doctor looks at the parents and says, either number one, your baby is dead, or number two, your baby is dying. Takes the baby, before the baby's even dead, doesn't have any other health issues, drops it on that table so the parents don't get emotionally connected with that child. Door is pulled shut. I tell the accountant, this is very real. Several years ago, there was a situation where this occurred. A nurse could actually hear the infant crying, and this was a case where it was spina bifida. She went to the physician who had delivered the child. She said, hey, look, all I want to do is go in and pick up this baby. She said, I won't give it any medical treatment at all. She said, it's just breaking my heart to hear this thing cry. Doctor said, no, you're not going to open the door. So she gets on the phone and she begins to call hospital administration. And they say, no, you're not going to open the door. She begins to make phone call after phone call after phone call. And eventually word gets to then President Reagan. And guys, it took an executive order from the President of the United States to get a door open so that a fellow human being could walk 10 feet, pick up a crying child. And yet, what we say the golden rule is, do unto others as you would have us do unto you. That is what I'm talking about when I discuss postnatal manipulation. Unfortunately, in our nation today, we have a term that's called quality of life. And if the medical profession says, hey, we don't deem you to have a good quality of life, then they start looking at other options. In other words, we're going to either let you die or we're going to give you enough morphine that your respiratory system shuts down and you go to sleep. As a Christian, can I support that?
No.
Absolutely not. Questions, comments, thoughts on that?
Hey, Brad?
Yes, sir.
What about the instance, I guess, where people are faced with pulling the plug on a family member?
Yes. You have your syllabus with you?
I can either confirm or deny whether I have my syllabus with me.
Can somebody help Dean Meadows with the syllabus? In that there is a line item that says end of life decision. Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate that very much. You see the one that says end of life decisions?
Yeah.
There we go. How about we hold your question to that?
Cop out.
No, he didn't just say cop out. John.
All those quotes you gave us regarding the postnatal manipulation,
Yeah.
with the exception of the last one, they were all Darwinian concepts, were they not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
And again, let me read to you Luke chapter 14. When you go to have a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and you'll be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the just. Guys, when you think about some of these infants that are born with these things, don't look at it as, oh, we got to kill it, because it's not going to have a quality of life. You think about the fact that that is still a human created in the image and likeness of God that has a soul. Yes, John.
So our evolutionary neighbors are receiving this information, and it's being infiltrated for a number of decades now into our school system, which includes our own children in our churches.
Yes.
Our job is to weed that out.
Yep. Guys, this class, I know it may not be your favorite in school, but it's going to end up being a very important one in your lives in that we're watching people kill unborn children. And during your lifetime, you're going to see a huge advance in the idea of euthanasia or dying with dignity because the baby boom population is getting older. And so we've got to be prepared to know how should we react in these areas as we devalue human life. And as John's saying, we got generations that are being told, hey, you're nothing but an ape. Generation after generation being taught this concept. So, all right, what I want to do for the last few minutes of class, Wayne, do you have the audio from the interview?
Yes, I do.
Okay. We're gonna play this, and we're gonna hold off on the surrogacy until Tuesday. We'll start with that, and then we'll pick up. Wayne has got a handout for you guys on surrogacy. Let me encourage you, go ahead and read that before you come to class next Tuesday. That will help facilitate our discussion, kind of whether or not that's something we need to be as Christians, whether we need to be supporting. Quinn, you have got a question?
Question while he's passing those out. I'm really intrigued by this class. Like, I don't know if I could, like, I don't, all these terms you're dropping, I know I can go over and study them. Are they in the book? Or are they not in the book? Because you're dropping a lot on me that I've never even heard of. That's a lot. And I'm like, I really am like overwhelmed. Like,
Don't be overwhelmed. Number one, all of my PowerPoints you guys will have access to. So feel comfortable with that. Number two, your tests will be coming from PowerPoints and from that book. I'm not going to, and number three, I don't expect you guys to take a test and be well versed on genetics and on, have a master's degree in biology. What I expect you to know is if I present you a scenario, I want to make sure that you can give me biblical reasoning for why you believe what you believe. If I give you a case study in a test, I want you to be able to say, well, you know what? Here's what the Bible says, so here's how I would counsel these people. Okay? I'm not gonna ask you to differentiate the difference between a Marola sage and a blastocyst.
see, that's what
And if you want to take,
I have no clue what you're talking about.
if you want to take genetics, we can do that next time. Wayne, if you got that audio, go ahead and run it. I'm going to sit in here because there may be a time or two that I want to interrupt and tell you, what she said or stress something.
Okay, here we go. There's a little telephone noise here. You just have to listen.
Yeah. Also, guys, this is on the iDentist. I'm going to leave it there probably for another 3 or 4 days, and then I'll take it down. So if you want to download it to your iPod or computer, you can do that. Yeah.
Some of the students don't have the website to get to your iDentist.
Well, we have it. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't work, yeah.
What is this? I'll help you. I downloaded this yesterday from the.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Let me put it up while y'all are listening. How about that?
That'd be great.
Hello. This is Abby. Hey, Abby, it's Dr. Brett here. How are you?
Hi, Dad, how are you?
I'm doing great. Is this a good time to talk for a few minutes?
Yeah.
All right, very good. I don't know if Karen sent you the questions ahead of time, but I've got them in front of me, and I thought we'd kind of start there and then just go wherever you want to go.
Yeah, sure, that'd be fine.
Okay. Do you mind if I record this so make sure I get both of our words correct?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Please share with our readers some of your background and how you became involved in the abortion controversy.
Sure. I was a student at Texas A&M and went to a volunteer opportunity fair that they had every semester on campus. And there was a woman there, and she was talking about Planned Parenthood. I really didn't know anything about Planned Parenthood. I didn't grow up in a community with a Planned Parenthood. So she was talking about Planned Parenthood and services they were providing, and she did talk about abortion a little bit because one of the volunteer duties was escorting women into the clinic whenever they were there for their abortion procedure. And I kind of told her that I'd grown up in a pro-life household, and she told me, she understood that, and that the reason that it was so important for women to have this choice was, if it wasn't available, then women would be having all these illegal abortions, and women would be, dying at this incredible rate, and I just thought that sounded horrible, and so I thought, well, this is something I can really get behind, this makes sense to me, and so I started volunteering, and I was a volunteer for about 2 years, and then became their campus intern position, but was their campus intern and kind of was the liaison between Planned Parenthood and Texas A&M University. And did that for a year. And then right before I graduated with my undergraduate degree from A&M, they asked me if I wanted to actually become an employee, a paid employee for Planned Parenthood. And yeah, I didn't have any other job prospects coming up, so I said sure. I knew I wanted to go on and get my master's degree, and they said they would work with me on that. And so I went ahead and started working there, and worked there through while I was getting my graduate degree, and kept getting promoted, and then eventually ran that particular health center.
So you actually grew up in what you would consider a pro-life family environment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. What do you think? What do you think it was that helped you to make that break and to say, you know what, I'm going to volunteer for them? Was there a certain phrase or a certain hook or catch or something that she was offering that made it appealing?
Well, I think just the idea that if legalized abortion is not available and these clinics are not available, then we're basically sending women to these slaughterhouses.
Okay.
And women are going to just be dying at this incredible rate. And for me, somebody that, I mean, I'm a very compassionate person, somebody who, you know, women's issues have always been very dear to my heart. And so to hear that and, you know, to hear somebody say, you know, women are going to be dying if this is not a legal option for women, I never really thought about it that way.
Okay. So in a way, in a really twisted kind of way, it was like you were pro-life, but for older life, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And really, that is the way that they want to frame the argument. They don't ever think about the unborn life, and that is intentional. They don't want to think about the baby. They don't want the people, the clinic workers, to think about the baby. They don't want the women coming in for the abortion to think about the baby. They only want the women to think about themselves, and they only want the clinic workers to think about the woman that's sitting in front of them in her situation. And that's very intentional.
Is there a single event, obviously, I know kind of the answer to this, but a single event that changed your perspective on life, and can you share what took place and how it changed you?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple things. I mean, one was just how the model, the business model had really been changing in the facility. You know, they had really gone from a family planning model, prevention model, to an abortion model. You know, abortion is our most lucrative business. It's how we make the most money. We're not making any money because of the economy, and we see abortion as an opportunity to really up our income, up our revenue, so we need to get as many women as possible to have these abortions. And that was troubling for me. And so that was kind of the first thing. And when I questioned that really kind of was my fall from grace. My supervisor, that was when she told me, you know, that abortion needed to be my number one priority. That I really didn't need to worry about family planning, that I needed to get my head in the game for abortion. And that's when I told her that abortion would never be my priority, that family planning would always be my priority. And that's kind of when it started to snowball for me.
Okay.
And then on September 26th, that's when I actually saw the ultrasound-guided abortion procedure. Ultrasound-guided abortions are very uncommon. They're particularly uncommon in large abortion facilities like Planned Parenthood facilities. If we're talking about abortion in terms of safe procedures, the best procedure for a woman, ultrasound-guided abortions are the safest procedure. It is the best type of procedure for the woman. There's less risk of uterine perforation. It's a really safer procedure. But these places don't want to do it because it takes a little bit more time, a little bit longer. But this particular physician that was coming down that day is a private practice abortion physician. He has his own practice out of town, and he was coming to do abortions that day. He was kind of a visiting physician that day. And in his practice, he only does ultrasound-guided abortion procedures, and this particular patient was a little further along in her pregnancy. She was about 13 weeks. And he decided that on this particular patient, he was going to do an ultrasound-guided abortion procedure. And so for that procedure, he needed an extra person in the room to hold the ultrasound probe, and that was me. So they called me into the room, told me that they needed me to hold the ultrasound probe and put it on her abdomen so that he could see the uterus during the procedure. And so that was doing my job during the procedure, so I did that. And so held everything in place, and I saw on the screen a 13-week baby, at 13 weeks, about 10 weeks, I mean, what you see on the ultrasound is a fully formed baby. So you see arms, legs, I mean, everything is fully formed. If you can get a good profile view. And this was a perfect profile view of the baby. And so I could see the whole side of the baby from head to foot. And then I saw the probe, it's called a cannula, that's hooked up to the actual machine that provides the suction. I saw that go into the woman's uterus, and I saw it kind of jabbing the side of the baby. And then, in just a few seconds, I saw the baby begin to react to that jabbing, and I saw the baby's legs and arms begin to move, and the baby was trying to get away from that probe.
Wow. Woo! I've got to ask this just because I'm sitting here imagining it for myself, but what were you going through internally at that point?
Well, I couldn't believe what I was looking at, because I felt almost just like sick at my stomach, because I just thought, I realized what I was about to look at. I realized what I was about to see. And then of course, they turned on, the suction, and the last thing I saw, the baby at that time, it has a perfectly formed backbone, and that backbone was the last thing I saw go through that cannula on the ultrasound screen. I'll never forget what that looked like on the ultrasound screen. And I was just, it was like something where, it's like a train wreck, like you don't want to watch, but you can't stop looking at it.
Yep.
That's what it was like for me. I didn't want to look at it, but I couldn't stop looking at the screen. And when I saw that baby moving, and, starting to, it was like it was waking up, like starting to move and trying to get away from that cannula, I immediately thought of all of the women that I had lied to. Because you get a lot of questions in the room,
Don't miss this part. Listen to what she's saying.
Questions before they go back for their abortion procedure. And one of the things they ask you frequently is, is my baby going to feel this? And every time I told them no.
Yeah.
Because I really didn't think that the baby would feel it. Planned Parenthood had told me no, it won't feel it. And so I said no. And I just immediately thought of all the women I'd lied to. And, was thinking, what if I told them the truth? What if I'd known the truth? Would I still be here at this job? Would those women have chosen abortion? What kind of difference would it have made if we all would have known the truth? Why are they trying to hide this?
So obviously your beliefs have changed. What would you say, today, here at the end of 2009, where are you on this controversial topic?
Well, I'm definitely pro-life. The other day I went out for the first time in front of the clinic on an abortion day. It was a good feeling to be on kind of the other side of the fence. But I guess I have a very unique sense of what is going on inside of that clinic, and what those women are feeling, because I've sat there and looked on the other, I've looked in their faces.
Right. So what would you say to somebody who, let's say we got a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old or even a 30-year-old who is currently pregnant and is not sure what to do? What would be your words of wisdom at this stage?
Well, I've been asked that a lot. I would say that a lot of times women choose abortion out of convenience. They think that most of the time, they think that abortion is going to be a quick fix. It's going to be something that is going to make their life easier. And I know that that's not the case. It is not a quick fix. It is not something that you will do and then it just goes away. It will be with you for the rest of your life. If you're a young person or person at any age and you don't have children, many women that choose abortion in their younger years, that memory of the child they aborted comes back to them when they are holding their wanted children. People have asked me, what would you have said differently to those women that you were counseling with? And, one of the things some of the things I would have said was that, your baby does have a heartbeat. No matter what you've been told, at any time that you're going to get an abortion, your baby does have a heartbeat. And that your baby probably is going to feel what's happening to it during the abortion. And that your baby is going to feel that pain. And that when the abortion is finished, somebody is going to have to go back and they're going to have to reassemble the baby in your uterus.
To make sure.
And they're going to know
Yep.
if you had a boy or a girl.
Wow.
This is very real. This is not just a mass of tissue. This is not just, a glob of
About 2 more
This
minutes.
is a real baby in your uterus.
Well, one other question I put on here. What do you think are the secrets of abortion industry that many folks never hear about? Obviously you kind of touched on one that I think a lot of people know, but maybe we don't admit it straight up, and that is a lot of this, bottom line, is about money.
Oh, yeah.
But what other things, what are some other things that, having been there, done that, so to speak, can you share with our readers?
It's so much about money. Anytime there are any kind of complications
When you say complications, you mean medical injury?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will pay her off to, keep her quiet. Which is sad because then we don't really know so many of those tragedies of abortion.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely, there's so many times where women have been injured from abortion, they have had botched abortions, and instead of going to the media, instead of that coming out so that us women can hear their stories, they're paid off and, required to sign a statement saying that they will not go public with that information. They will do things to, in some states, like in Texas, and in many other states, there are laws where they will have to ask the woman if she wants to view her ultrasound. If the woman does choose to view her ultrasound, and let's say she is 10, 12, 14 weeks pregnant, they will not show her the full profile of her baby. They may only show her,
The leg.
the leg, and if you're a layperson looking at an ultrasound, you don't know what that is. And so they'll say, oh, that's it. Okay, that's it. You can't even see anything. And, because they don't want to give her the truth. And, they call themselves pro-choice, but it's not really about giving women the honest choices. There's just so many things that they are not honest about. They never go over all of the risks about abortion when a woman comes in. They never talk about all of the options before a woman comes in for an abortion. If a woman comes in for an abortion, they never talk to her about, have you considered your other options? They just assume that if she's there for an abortion, that she has considered those other options, and that may not be the case.
Right. Guys, remember this is somebody who spent a lot of time in Planned Parenthood. Is emotionally torn up.
Absolutely. And the abortion.
Those of you who need to leave, if you need to, go ahead. Feel free.
Oh, no.
That, they're weak, that, they're probably emotionally unstable to begin with. They don't believe in, post-abortion syndrome. And they believe that, if you're a normal person, that you're going to do fine after an abortion. And so they really just dismiss women that do have regret after abortion, and they think that, something is wrong with them.
Well, Abby, I appreciate more than you know you spending a few minutes with us. I'll say this: I'm exceptionally thankful that you're on our side and that you're willing to talk about it because, like you say, I think there is a truth there that is not getting out, and I think if more women arm themselves with the knowledge of what you're talking about, I think we would have less abortions going on today than we do, because it is painted as kind of a, this isn't going to hurt, it's not a big deal, it's a quick outpatient thing, don't worry about it kind of procedure. And the reality of it is, it's like you say, it's a beating heart that is terminated. I think I have got your mailing address. What I'll do is type this up, and we will send you copies for you to use at your disposal. And if you need extras, just let us know. And if we can be of any help at all, please let me know.
Okay, that would be great.
Thanks, Abby. We appreciate your help.
Okay, Brad, that's it.
Brad?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys staying and listening to that.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
He got it for you.
Anybody that wants to help get on Brad's side, I'll be happy to.
Yeah, we just have the wrong website, so we got it. Yeah, we're good to go. Thank you, though, Wayne.
I was putting 2 backslashes in it.
I have the wrong website.
Do it.
Supposed to be that coupon with us. Do we have it? It's on the shelf right now.
Well, I tried that rattle sort of smell it. So Emma will sleep. Emily. Emma. Yeah. I'm getting orientated in the orange thing.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll go under.